What if your dream home was waiting for you in the countryside? A quiet farmhouse, rolling green hills, a fresh start for your family. But the walls don't stay quiet. Boots stomp overhead, furniture drags across empty rooms, and the power meter spins like a whirlpool, swallowing money month after month. Then come the shadows. A hooded figure at the end of the bed, a woman in black lace, a scent of sulfur that no fire could explain, and the father, an artist, once gentle, finds his paintings twisting into demons. His moods darken, and his wife begins to wonder, is it stress, isolation, or something inside this house, possessing him? Exorcists were called, psychics fled, and the story has never been fully explained. Locals called it the witch house, but its true name is Heol Fanog. This is lost in the list. In 1989, Bill and Liz Rich moved their family into a farmhouse in the hills of Wales. Bill was a talented painter. In London, he'd worked as a commercial artist, producing illustrations to pay the bills. But what he wanted was freedom, time and space to pursue his own art. Landscapes, abstracts, the kind of work that needed peace and quiet to take shape. His wife Liz shared that dream. She had a background in theatre, working as an actress before turning her focus to raising their children. For her, the countryside meant something simpler: fresh air, room for the children to run, and an escape from the crowded streets of the city. A chance to start again. The farmhouse they chose was called Heol Fanog. The name translates roughly to Road to the Peaks, though its origins remain unclear. The property itself dated back at least a century, its thick stone walls built to endure the Welsh winters, and from its perch on the slopes of the Brecon Beacons, it looked out over fields that seemed to roll forever. There were no neighbours in sight. From the outside, it was everything they were looking for: remote, isolated, and for this young family, filled with old-world charm. Yet Heol Fanog had a history the family didn't hear about when they signed the papers. Locals whispered that the place was unlucky, that strange things had happened there before. Some even called it cursed. But the Riches didn't hear those whispers. For them, this was a new beginning, a chance to turn the page. And for a while, life in Heol Fanog did seem normal. Quiet mornings, long days, the rhythm of the countryside. But slowly, almost too slowly to notice at first, things began to change. The first signs were subtle. So subtle, the family almost convinced themselves they weren't there. At night, the sound of footsteps crossed the ceiling above the children's bedroom. Heavy, deliberate. But when Bill went to check, the rooms were empty. Other nights, it was the scrape of furniture dragging across bare floors, the echo of something heavy moving in a house where nothing had shifted. Then came the smells. Not the earthy scent of an old farmhouse, but sharp chemical notes. Incense, sulfur, rot, odors that appeared and disappeared without warning. The family tried to explain it away. Wind in the rafters, old pipes, farmhouse quirks. But one thing they couldn't explain were the bills. Every month, envelopes arrived from the power company, each one higher than the last. Astronomical charges for electricity they hadn't used. Meters were checked, wiring inspected. Nothing was found. As weeks turned into months, the bills soared into hundreds of pounds, more than a farmhouse could ever consume. It was as though something in the house was feeding, drawing power from nowhere. And while the numbers grew, so did the sense of unease. The rich family had come to Heol Fanog in search of peace. But peace was slipping away, replaced by a gnawing awareness that they were not alone. At first it was only glimpses, a shadow moving where there shouldn't be one, a figure caught in the corner of an eye. But soon the shapes grew bolder. At night, Liz woke to a hooded figure standing at the end of her bed, tall, silent, watching. Other times she saw a woman in black lace, her form shifting like smoke. And more than once, an old woman in Victorian dress appeared, her face weathered, her eyes locked on the living. Even the animals sensed it. Dogs growled at empty corners. Livestock refused to cross the threshold of certain rooms. The house no longer felt like theirs. It felt occupied, claimed, and as the apparitions grew stronger, the strain inside the family deepened. Bill was changing. His once bright paintings began to twist. Dark figures, grotesque shapes, canvases filled with violence and shadow. Themes, he said, came unbidden, as if something else was guiding his hand. His moods shifted too. Eruptions of anger, moments of brooding silence, a heaviness that seemed to cling to him. Liz began to wonder if her husband was slipping away, not just into depression or stress, but into something darker, something that belonged to the house. Try as Bill might to maintain some semblance of normalcy in his work, his art grew darker still. His canvases filled with scenes of violence. Brides streaked in crimson, grotesque figures suspended in shadow, faces staring back with eyes that seemed to follow anyone who looked too long. The imagery unsettled neighbors and friends alike. What once drew admiration now stirred fear. Then came the painting of Echo. A local farmer had asked Bill to capture his favorite horse. It was a proud animal, strong, admired, the kind of creature any artist would want to paint. But no matter how he tried, the portrait was wrong. The hind leg bent at an unnatural angle, twisted as though it were broken. Bill painted, erased, tried again. But each version ended the same. The leg always bent, always broken. Days later, Echo collapsed in the field. The horse's hind leg had shattered, just as it appeared on Bill's canvas. Regrettably, the animal had to be put down. The farmer, shaken by the coincidence, dragged the painting outside and burned it. He wanted nothing of it left behind. Bill himself seemed to fracture. He withdrew, moody and volatile. At times, dark thoughts pressed in. Thoughts of harm, of endings. Liz feared the house was consuming him. So she turned to others. The first was John Aston, a Baptist minister from Swansea. During his visit, Liz collapsed without warning. Her voice twisted, mocking, cruel. Words she would never remember speaking. Then came David Homewood, head of the Cardiff Spiritualist Church. He believed the focus of the disturbance wasn't Bill at all, but their teenage son, Lawrence. To weaken the connection, Lawrence was sent away to live elsewhere. The decision devastated Bill. Already unmoored by the darkness in his art, he now carried the weight of separation from his son. The silence in the house grew heavier, and the fear cut deeper. Homewood also gathered Bill's occult books and many of his paintings, burning them in a cleansing ritual, and advising Bill to paint only images of religious significance. For a while, the house grew quiet, but the silence did not last. Reverend Roy Matthews, from Abergavenny, attempted a more forceful exorcism. He claimed to expel 4 presences, 2 young men, an old woman, and a darker spirit among them. Again, calm returned, but only for a season. Finally, the Riches called on renowned psychic Eddie Burks. He said the force inside Heol Fanog was ancient, older than Christianity, a pagan remnant of the land itself. During his ritual, a surge of energy cracked through a tape recorder. Bill described a weight lifting from his skull. The air felt lighter, the rooms brighter. For the first time in years, the riches thought they might be free, but the witch house hadn't finished with them yet. Even after Eddie Burke's declaration that things were going to improve, the shadows crept back. At first, small things returned. Cold spots, sudden knocks, the smell of sulfur in empty rooms. But then, the house struck harder. One night, Liz awoke to a towering silhouette in the hallway. 7 feet tall, broad-shouldered. It didn't move, didn't speak, but radiated a malice so intense, she later said it felt like it wanted to take her soul. The livestock continued to suffer. Goats and pigs fell ill. Lambs were found dead without explanation. And the family's dogs refused to enter certain rooms, growling at doorways as if something stood waiting inside. On one occasion, David Holmwood, one of the priests mentioned earlier, was driving back to the farm when his car was struck out of nowhere by an owl, causing the animal to die instantly. To Liz, it was no accident. It was an omen, a warning that the battle with Heol Fanog was far from finished. And through it all, Bill declined further. He confessed to sleepless nights, to a crushing weight pressing down on his chest, to thoughts that didn't feel like his own. Dark impulses that seemed to whisper from the walls themselves. Even when he followed Holmwood's advice and painted religious scenes, the canvases came out warped, crosses bent at odd angles, crucifixions drenched in shadow, figures with faces too distorted to inspire reverence. They were not paintings of salvation, they were mockeries. Twice during their years in the farmhouse, Liz became pregnant, and each time the activity surged. Whispers grew louder, footsteps heavier, apparitions more frequent. The family believed the house fed on those vulnerable times, each unborn child a spark that drew the shadows closer. What began as whispers and knocks stretched into 7 years of torment. 7 years of flickering hope, temporary silences, and the slow unraveling of a family under siege. So, you may be asking why the family didn't leave sooner. Well, because every exorcism, every ritual, brought just enough relief to make them believe the end was near. Because the crushing bills brought on by the spikes in their electricity drained their savings, and they had nowhere else to go. Because when you live inside the haunting, you cling to the hope that tomorrow will be better, but tomorrow never was. By the 7th year, the pressure became unbearable. The marriage was breaking, the children were growing up inside a nightmare, and Bill himself admitted the house was pushing him towards self-destruction. In the end, they didn't leave because they found a way. They left because staying any longer meant losing everything. They packed what little they had left and finally made the decision to walk away from Heol Fanog. When the rich family finally escaped their house of torment, they carried more than their belongings. They carried scars, emotional, financial, and spiritual. The marriage did not survive. The family fractured. And even years later, both Bill and Liz spoke of the house with unease, as if its shadow still followed them. Doctors later wondered if Bill might have been suffering from schizophrenia or another undiagnosed condition. Others point to more worldly causes: the crushing isolation of the Welsh hills, the relentless financial pressure of electricity bills that made no sense, the stress of raising children in a crumbling farmhouse. Some even suggest carbon monoxide poisoning or toxic mold hidden in the stone walls. Factors known to cause hallucinations, mood swings, and paranoia. And yet, Not all of it can be explained away. The apparitions seen by multiple witnesses, the animals that sickened and died, the energy crackling through a tape recorder during an exorcism, events that resist easy answers. Whether curse or coincidence, its story endures. Thank you for listening, and for taking this journey with us into what became the single most heavily exorcised house in Britain. The Witch House. This has been lost in the list.